There we go.
It kept telling me I didn't have the correct app.
Well, you're here. You're here.
I'm here.
Welcome, welcome. Anyhow, we're just at 11:01, so we might as well get started.
Yeah.
Okay, well, welcome. I'm Jonathan Slater. I am director of the Institute for Ethics in Public Life, and welcome to this session with Patrick Hauser. I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, Patrick Hauser?
Yes. Yes, okay. Indeed.
Excellent, excellent. And Patrick's talk today is Protecting the Cave, Ancient Archetype to Modern Stereotypes. What's a man to do? Just a couple of tips before we start. Just to let you know that all presentations today are being recorded. So if you've missed one because your attention has been drawn away by another session, you'll have an opportunity to view all of the sessions after the conference. If you have any questions or comments, I'll be here to moderate those at the end of this session, but you can put your questions and comments in the Q&A, in the question and answer section of your Zoom link. So I'm going to welcome again our speaker, Patrick Hauser. And Patrick writes that it was the traumatic birth of his first child that led him to explore the psychological, emotional, and spiritual nature of the birth experience and early family life. What he calls the extraordinary birth of his second child, the first documented waterbirth in the United States around 1980, led him to a whole awareness regarding life itself. In 2005, while Patrick was living in the United Kingdom, a colleague, Elmer Postle, am I pronouncing his name right? And Patrick co-founded the initiative Fathers To Be, to explore birth and early parenting from a more balanced perspective, father inclusiveness, and support. The following year, Patrick published Fathers To Be Handbook, and since then, he's been speaking at conferences like this one and running workshops for birth professionals and parents in various countries on how to best support the whole family during this significant and irreplaceable time. Welcome, Patrick. The virtual floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Yeah, well, I guess to say that I knew from an early age that I wanted to be a father, but had not put that into a context until my wife and I got pregnant. And then it began a whole new adventure in my life. And so as the first birth of our first child, a home birth, was traumatic, it took us a couple of years to kind of recover from that. And then we were introduced to some more psychological perspectives in our inner life in a way that helped us understand the emotional side of birth and what dynamic that played in the process. And this is historical for people as far as how you were born and how your birth then affects the rest of your life. And so then we went on to develop the water birth. And the first labor was 36 hours. The second was, 90 minutes. And oftentimes the second birth is quicker. However, this was dramatic. And yeah, so let me go ahead and share my screen. There it is. Okay. Oh, this is not. Just a moment. This is not at the beginning. There we go. All right. Yeah, so in the early days, thousands of years ago, this picture kind of depicts what's a dad's job, right? Well, wild animals and such. And so it was much clearer back then. So Elmer and I, in a meeting one morning this support group, looked at each other, and Elmer was a brand new father, and I was already a grandfather. And so we looked at each other and said, "Oh my goodness, there's something we can do, to support new families and ourselves in the process." And so this involves what's known as the primary time, from conception through the child's second year. Up in England, there's an initiative called 1001 Days, and it focuses on the significance of this time in a child's life, and indeed a family's life, and how that then carries forward with them, and how that prepares them or not for what's to come. And from our perspective, it involves mind, body, spirit. We are all of these things. We are not just the physical body. We are not just a thinking person. We have an essence to ourselves, non-religious, but the essence of ourselves. So when I came back from this retreat that Elmer and I had conceived this process of Fathers to Be, how can we support new dads better? I came back from this retreat and I went to Google, and Google is the oracle of our day, right? Google knows everything. And so in Google, I put in Fathers to Be, and I put it in brackets so that it would get me right to what does our culture have to say about Fathers to Be. Now you can see down at the bottom here, it says Mothers to Be searches over 500,000, birth searches, lots, 146 million, lots of them. So what did it come back and tell me regarding Fathers to Be and our society? No results found for Fathers to Be. Did you mean Mothers to Be? Now, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It was like, how is this possible? There wasn't a single reference on the World Wide Web in July of 2006 for Fathers to Be. Yeah, I was dumbfounded. It was just profound. And so it was like, well, there's some work to do here. So we look at this from the spectrum of sociology, psychology, and spirituality. Sociology is our culture. The psychology is the dynamics of human interaction that then, in a way, create the sociology. And spirituality is, again, the essence of who we are and how we are. And how did we get to be this way, indeed? So protecting the cave. Mom's in here, heavy breathing, delivering her baby. Dad's outside. And what's he up to? Well, he's protecting his new family from all the wild animals. Clear and present danger, right? There was no doubt in his mind what his job was or how to do it. So, ancient times, right? This is for thousands of years. This is how it went. So now we fast forward 20th century, what I call father figures. Dr. Bradley, Dr. Lamaze, and Dr. Grantley Dick Reed. 3 doctors in 3 different countries, 50s, 60s started coming up with, how can we do better? And they all recognized these were innovators, and they had 4 things in common that they all recognized. One was they recognized the importance of the mother feeling safe, the absence of fear, that fear brought dynamics into the birthing room that would either slow down or even stop a woman's progress in labor. This was so important. It is probably the single most important ingredient to a successful birth, is the mother feeling safe. And they all recognized the value the father could add in supporting her. They already have this intimate relationship. So the possibility here is that they could include that dynamic, that creation of love between them, in supporting her delivery. However, none of these 3 gentlemen, men, right, in charge of birth, none of them recognized or supported the experience the father was having, nor were they preparing the professionals in the room for dad's presence. Here, dad is in the birthing room, a completely foreign environment to him, birth itself, as well as a hospital and the room that they're in and all of that, because the vast majority of births are in a hospital. And so here we have him in the birthing room. And, in England, there's a backhanded joke about give the dad gas and air. nitric oxide, right? You give him some gas so it calms him down. Well, and then the thing about dads fainting during the birth and that sort of thing. Well, that's all emblematic of fear, right? That's fear coming into his being because he didn't have a clue what was happening and he wasn't prepared for the process. So a new father has arrived. Here we are, mid 20th century onward, and dads are now taking up the torch. They are engaged with their children. They are loving new family life. They are in the process, and more, they're being provided with opportunities to gradually come into this process. Over 90% of fathers are at the birth of their children in the West. That is huge, huge, huge. In 1975, your typical father spent 15 minutes a day with his children, 15 minutes. By 1997, it was 2 hours. And by 2009, it was 5 hours per day. Now, this includes stay-at-home dads and it includes weekends. So, but the fascinating thing is this a coincidence or a clue to dads taking up their engagement in family life in general and caring for the children? They were at the birth, they were introduced to their child, they were part of this process. And so they carry on with that. They become part of it. So if dads are at home with birth, then the job is done, right? Okay, so dads are engaged, dads are at birth, dads are involved with the family. However, are they finished protecting the cave? Well, the cave, don't need the cave anymore, right? So we sell the cave, put it on Craigslist. However, almost parallel to fathers entering the birthing room, birth had become industrialized, mechanized, and medicalized. Well, this provided a whole different dilemma for the father, or the birth parent, the birth partner. Could it be that the father and partner is needed in the birthing room for a more primal reason than we would like to think? Is there a chance there is still danger looming? A new father has arrived and landed in it. So this is oftentimes what a birthing room is like today. Well, they're not exactly wild animals, but they are an uncontrollable force. They are a force to be reckoned with. All of these interventions. So as interference from our modern approach to birth and natural physiological process reached the point where fathers are now needed to intercede to protect in a new way. Cesarean rates in some countries have escalated to as high as 80%. Interventions in every unimaginable kind are rampant, and much of what is being done to the mother and child is unnecessary, preemptive, and primarily based on fear, which of course is now built into the system. And medical professionals are trained in this process. Let's be preemptive. Let's do something in advance so we don't have to worry about something else occurring. What if a reason has evolved to have the father in the birthing room in addition to bonding and support? Suppose that a modern form of father's protection is to guard against excessive interference of people, equipment, artificial drugs into the very ordinary process of birth. Here, the dangers were clear. It was obvious what his job was and how to do it. But times have changed. Humanity cannot invent a drug that can work better than a mother's body can manufacture, nor a knife that is sharper than her instinctual nature. That's an excerpt from my Fathers To Be Handbook. And I truly believe that if a mother is left to work with her system, to pay attention to her hormones and the rhythm of the process in the birthing room, in the birthing process, then she's more apt to be able to carry it out without any form of intervention. Kind of parallel this with caring for the plant kingdom. Look how we gently hold a plant. However, plant kingdom, we have now GMOs where pesticides genes are introduced into plant seeds that are then made into food. So our culture has taken a turn for the worse in these regards in the birth and the care for our food and families and such. And it's It's a tragedy. I'll protect you. I'll protect you. Perhaps a more intimate cave needs protecting. Perhaps it's the womb itself that needs protecting. So here he is, a modern dad, right? So what's he supposed to do? Become a ninja warrior? You know, or in 9 months get a medical degree so he knows what's right and what's wrong and how to do it and how to be safe with it. You know, it's, you know, a modern dad, right? This is a dilemma. How on earth do you protect your loving partner and your child in this process? She's having a baby. What am I supposed to be doing? Or you could just step aside and pray, right? We've got to do better. Fathers generally are terrified, and why shouldn't they be? It's like they've been pushed out of an airplane at 10,000 feet and nobody bothered to tell them how to use their parachute. I mean, we've got to do better. We've got to educate parents, and it's not just the parents, it's culture in general. This is a whole societal process. This is not just something that's the responsibility of birth educators or midwives or doulas. It's the responsibility of our society. As a society, it's important that we take this on, that we come together to support new families and the importance of that time. So, or, you know, like tossing a dad in the sea and saying, now surf. Oh, but wait, we never bothered to show you how to swim, you know. And I love this analogy with the sea, because birth is a very feminine process. And as the sea is, and it comes in rhythms, it comes in waves, you know. And so it is for the most part, it's a foreign energy to a man. A woman has her monthly cycles. She is more emotion-based in response to things. So dads have to be, you know, nurtured along the way so that they feel safe with the process and they can support the mother in the best way. So fathers need to trust birth. It's a natural, normal, physiological process, and she will be able to do it. Birth is safe. So around birth, there's what I call the 4 biggies for dads. Pardon me. Pain, time, noise, and safety. Pain. Well, what do men know about pain? They fell off their bike and got hurt. They hit their thumb with the hammer. They were playing sports and they got injured. To a man, pain equals injury, equals suffering, equals a problem. What about birth? Many, many, many births are not experienced in the form of pain. Yes, there is big energy. Many women experience pleasure during birth if they've been able to let go, trust the process, and go to that part of their being and let the hormones flow. So birth is creative. Pain in the process of birth is actually creative. It's part of what's going on in the body that allows the baby to come out. There is no injury being done. There is no damage being done in the process. The pain, if there is pain, is part of a natural process. So why is this important for a man to know? If he sees the woman he loves in pain, he thinks there's a problem. It's not a problem. Time. Men want to know. Birth partners want to know. Hey, how long is this going to take? Well, I say, how long is a piece of string? You know, it takes what it takes. There's a rhythm to the process. There is not a clock to watch. Be present. Be with the process. Allow it to take its time. Allow it to happen in the natural way within the mother's body and the baby's. The baby and the mother are doing a dance together. And it's important that they stay in sync and they work with the energy of her body and the baby's body and the hormones that are triggering all of this so that the process can happen normally. Noise. What if a father or birth partner hears this woman he loves making all of these animal-like noises? You know, what if she's screaming? What if she's growling? What if she's, you know, doing these unusual noises he's never heard come out of her mouth before, right? That's normal. That's healthy. That means she's in the zone. That means she's doing what she needs to do to work with the energy in her body. that's okay. That's the way it should be if that's what's coming from her. Safety, birth is safe. It's been said that 95% of births could happen normally and naturally without intervention if parents were prepared, the environment was right, couples felt safe, all of that. So yes, the mother is safe, the baby is safe in the far majority of the cases. So what's the point of these? If dads don't know these four things, then how on earth are they supposed to feel safe with them? It's important. It's important we talk about this. It's important that we share this. It's important that everyone knows that this is the way it works. Most, Hollywood films and TV programs, when a woman's, giving birth, oh my God, first, it's an emergency. And second, it's like, rush to the hospital, hurry up, blah, blah, and then lay on your back and put your feet up in stirrups. And that's being done less and less, fortunately. But the best thing a woman can do during labor is to move around. Choose a position that feels natural to her, not land on your back, and do it the way they say to do it. She's got to be given the space to do it right. So dads need to understand this, that this is how it works and that this is okay. Also, there's this thing called KUVAD. Expectant dads can experience pregnancy symptoms themselves, including cramps, back pains, mood swings, food cravings, morning sickness, fatigue, depression, insomnia. It's known as KUVAD. It could be characteristic of attachment, anxiety, or being attuned to the mother and or child, also known as empathy. KUVAD frequency estimates are between 20 to 80% of all expectant dads. Now, how could a range be so big, 20 to 80%? Guess what? How much research has been done on this? Not a heck of a lot. So that's why this is such a broad range. And some fathers can have just a little inkling of it, and others may experience it, much, much more strongly. But it's interesting to know this, and that fathers know that, and mothers, that if he is having symptoms, well, that means he's engaging in the process. That means that he's present. That means that, and it's okay. The ultimate paradox of our masculine and feminine nature. So this is fascinating because, to me, the archetype of the male is that he's the strong one. He's doing the heavy lifting. He's meant to protect, do all that sort of thing. However, at birth, he's not doing the physical thing. Guess who's doing the physical work? The woman. She's got this big energy. She has this big job to do, and she's engaged in this process. So there's been a role reversal here. The woman is doing the big energy stuff. So what's the man's job? Well, to me, the way I put it is the father's job at birth is to do nothing, but do it really well, which is basically just being present. It's doing the soft thing. It's being with the process and staying present rather than getting involved physically, doing something active, doing, forcing your will or doing that sort of thing. Be present, be with the woman, allow her to have her process. We have an education opportunity here. Big capital E on education. So how are we raising our male children? How are we preparing them for parenting and family life? So here's, a stereotype from, what was it, the 70s or something? Here's the macho man. Here's the guy that just Mr. Tough guy, right? So if we're raising our children to be tough and don't cry and, play sports and be a man, grow up to be tough, be head of the family, do all that sort of thing. Well, that isn't necessarily a service for, the next, here, we're comparing these as like, oh yeah, let's stick with the old model. It works pretty good, right? Well, not really. So when it comes to family time, dads are engaged in a whole different way. And by the way, this Mr. Mom thing, I don't go for at all. It's like, Mrs. Dad, what, because a mother has a career, a woman has a career? No, not really. But dads are taking up the torch. Dads are, doing the work. Like, so like back in 2006, when I was doing the research, and, that dads are engaged, so much more in the time they spend with the family. So we need to think about, as a society, how are we raising our male children? Are we raising them to be tender and caring and supportive and nurturing? Or, are we doing that other thing? So fathers need to learn to ride the waves of pregnancy, birth, and breastfeeding. And breastfeeding is a big one for me. I have a whole presentation just on breastfeeding and dads. This can trigger some things in a man, the breastfeeding process, to see someone else with his partner's breasts in such an intimate way. And if men can cross that divide and they can understand the process and learn what breastfeeding is about and how it supports the mother and the child, and it's not just about the food. Think, oh, well, we'll just do a formula, so that'll handle the food part, and then I can hold the bottle. And well, research shows within a couple of weeks, a dad insisting, let's do bottle feeding so I can do something. Within a couple of weeks, he fades away. But in the meantime, the child is off the breast, and we've really spoiled the mother-child process by interfering with the bottle. So really, breastfeeding is really the way it should go. Support professionals have an important role to play in welcoming fathers into pregnancy, birth, breastfeeding, and the new family. Welcome is the most important word in this whole process. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you go to somebody's house for dinner and they don't say welcome, you don't feel welcome. What's it like? Well, this is a much more significant process, a family, so it's really important. For the majority of mothers, an important ingredient in successful pregnancy, birth, and breastfeeding is the care provided by the father. And as we've seen, this has progressed over time, and the father is way more engaged. This is Marie Mongan, the founder of Hypnobirthing, who's no longer with us, but her work carries on. The knowledge that she is supported by a caring and loving companion is one of the most important factors in maintaining the emotional well-being of a pregnant mother and the baby she is carrying. And notice this says the knowledge. No activity has occurred here. It's just the knowledge, her understanding that, wow, I have support. That's huge for a pregnant woman and a new mother. The birth of a child is the ultimate perfection of human love. Brantley Dick Green. The science of father love and the biology of the new family. Within 15 minutes of holding a baby, men tend to experience raised levels of hormones associated with bonding, tolerance, trust, and sensitivity to infants. And this isn't him holding his own child. This is holding any baby. There is this connection, this human connection that triggers hormone levels when that level of intimacy occurs with a man, and of course with women as well. Prolactin, vasopressin, and oxytocin are among the hormones that are found at higher levels in men around the time of birth. Those are significant and important towards his engagement with the family, staying present and not running away because he's afraid. So father love, added as an important ingredient in the recipe of a mother's love, mother love, can be a useful enhancement for birth. Fathers are requiring tenderness and a sense of belonging from engaging with mothers and babies during pregnancy, birth, and breastfeeding. This then establishes a more durable foundation for lifelong loving relationships between family members. Fathers need support in order to fully access their potential. Fathers make a world of difference. Look at this man's face receiving his child. Now, this child is now in his 20s. But do you suppose there's anything could ever have separated that child from that father after he had this experience of receiving his child from its mother? When it comes to hospital birth, the father's biggest dilemma is how to navigate and negotiate the gauntlet of this totally born environment, like a roller coaster, right? I mean, he doesn't have a clue, how to deal with this. He will face emotional and physical situations as never before. These will pertain to him directly, as well as to ones he loves and desires to protect and wants the best for. There is no good or right answer as to how to do this. Typically in unfamiliar environments, it's education, education, education. If you're going to do electrical wiring in a house, it's best you have some education beforehand, or there might be an incident that doesn't go so well. So, and the education starts from the beginning, from how we raise our children. Families are spread out now. We don't have as many home births as would be lovely. Most fathers have never seen a birth, and the only birth they've ever been at is the one when they were being born. And by the way, that has residual effects too. How we were born has a whole lot to do with how our life will be, how we are treated at birth. So it's about relationships. In the beginning, we have a man, we have a woman, we have their lives coming together. Perhaps they're living together, they're married, whatever, they're in a relationship, and their lives overlap, and they have this intimate, caring space for each other. And then we have a conception. So what happens next? We have a very, very complex situation. This is no longer just two people coming together being a couple. We have a woman who's now a mother. We have a man who's now a father. And we have a child. And by the way, the child may be a boy child or a girl child. And that has a different dynamic on the whole family relationship as well. So where all of this intersects, ideally, there would be nothing but love present all the time. However, in the emotional world, there's oftentimes times when there comes to play, our own personal history, how we were raised. How did we get to be the way we are? Well, look at our education, and with the capital E, our education began in the womb. It began in the womb. We were listening, pay attention, from a pre-verbal state. We are actually more vulnerable on the influences that will go on to affect our entire life, because we don't have verbal use. We don't have the outside world and distractions. What we have is the essence of life. And the essence of life is the experience the mother is having. It's everything that's happening in her environment that is then translated to the baby directly or indirectly, oftentimes through the hormones the mother is experiencing. If she's experiencing, harm in some way, danger, fear, that generates hormones in her body that then pass on to the baby. They go through the placenta, those hormones, and are affecting the baby and the baby's experience in utero. And that then is carried on throughout the lifetime of the child. So parents have a significant influence over their child's development from preconception onward. This is my water baby as he was underwater after he came out of my wife. Those are my hands. I received him from his mother. The quality of birth affects the quality of life, and in turn impacts and shapes the quality of society. Birth is the source experience in the body, and we were conscious at birth. Birth affects our whole subsequent mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. The decisions we make at birth are the foundation for the beliefs and patterns activated in this lifetime. Those individual attitudes and patterns translate to the attitudes and patterns displayed by nations. Benny Dans, ecstaticbirth.com. Parents, Architects of the Future. This is a book that I have started working on, or just barely, but it's more sociologically oriented because it is really the responsibility of our entire culture. And, Architects of the Future comes totally from the psychological, emotional, spiritual well-being side of life, not from altering DNA and messing around in that realm. We have this opportunity. In the very center picture, that's my water baby with his newborn, who, by the way, is now 13 years old. And yes, so if parents really understood the depth of the opportunity they have during this precious time, even before conception, preparing themselves physiologically, nutritionally, emotionally for welcoming this new life into their world. It's profound how we can create a new culture based on love rather than fear, based on peace rather than war. Pregnancy is a time of heightened awareness and sensitivity. An expectant mother must take special care to nourish her inner self as well as her body. Virtually every element of a baby's life in utero is under the influence of the mother's physical and emotional environment. Prenatal education needs to inform expectant parents how their thoughts and emotions have a profound impact on their baby and his/her well-being and future potential. My screen is, anyway, this is Jean Leenloff, the continuum concept. There's a thing on my screen. I can't quite see the top of that quote, but you can, trustfully. The origins of love and violence are in the womb. Jean Lee, the continuum concept, if you've never had a chance to read that book, it is profound. Something, I am not, my computer is not progressing. Let me escape and come back. My goodness. There we go. Okay. Decades ago, because of commitment to creativity, spending billions of dollars, humanity was successful at landing a man on the moon. When will we make the commitment to land people safely on Earth? Think about it. Billions. What if we spent billions on educating our culture about the significance and the opportunity we have for recreating our culture, our society, our world from a whole new place? The spirit of fatherhood. When men feel welcome, included, and confident in their role as a father, they have the potential to embrace their child's spiritual nature. We know in our heart of hearts that there is more to life than the visible world. Just as a mother gives birth to a child's body, so can a father lovingly support the birth of a child's spirit, their essential self, their highest purpose and ideals for their lifetime. It's from my Fathers To Be Handbook. I love my baby. This child's now a teenager. Friends of mine in Denmark. I mean, I love my baby and my baby loves me. Love happens in reciprocation. It doesn't happen sitting in a room by yourself. It happens in relationship. And when we remove the barriers to love, which basically are fear, fear is the only thing that interrupts love. I mean, when you boil it down to the essence. And so it's really important that we enter this space knowing that. And midwives have asked me, oh, how do I know if a dad is engaged? What if he's playing on his phone? What if he's making phone calls? What if he's leaving the room? What if he's going to sleep? Well, again, it's basic. There's love and there's fear. Love looks like being present, looks like being supportive, looks like doing nothing but doing it really, really well. Fear looks like distraction, leaving the space, running away, going to sleep. All of those things are fear-based. So look into the man's eyes. Tell him he's safe. Tell him what's going on is just fine. Tell him that this is wonderful. Look, if no words are appropriate, then just look into his eyes. That will reassure him. That will settle him. And it's also just an indication of either his lack of being prepared. And again, that's not just his responsibility, that's a cultural responsibility. Or him being triggered from something in his own past that's preventing him from being present. Really important to engage in the process, to bring them into the room, so to speak, in every way, mind, body, and spirit. A new father has arrived. They're keen, they're eager, they're willing. Most fathers are really wanting to do their best. And as a society, it's our responsibility to support that process, to help them to do their best in this process. So my book, Fathers To Be Handbook, in support of you, your practice families, and society. So the essence of all this is the opportunity that we have. It's, you know, it's nice to have information, but then we need to put it into force, whether it's in our schools. You know, I would love to give away millions of my books to adolescent boys. You know, get the book out there before sexual activity even starts. Let them better understand this whole process of becoming a father and what's involved in it. Because my book is not about changing diapers. It's about our emotional self, how we got to be this way. And oh, by the way, how was I father? Guess what? That has a huge influence on how you're going to be as a father. Many times a father will either react, either he will walk unconsciously into the fathering process, in which case he will most of the time do it the same way his father did it to him. Or sometimes he will swing the pendulum the other way and go, oh no, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to do it the exact opposite. Well, that's not exactly choice either. A middle place is much better, where he gets well informed and educated and gets support. Perhaps some friends of his that are already fathers. You know, it's important that he engage in this process in a certain way that allows his relationship with the mother to blossom and mature and improve. Because, you know, this thing of disappearing dads, which is on the decline to a certain extent, yet, you know, a disappearing dad, where does that come from? Fear, lack of understanding, lack of knowing what to do and what not to do, you know. And so, you know, all the birth professionals, psychologists, all of that realm is important. Also the mothers, it's important that mothers welcome the father into fathering, and not coming up with things like, oh, here, do this, but do it this way, you know, like changing a diaper. Well, dad's going to figure that out. And if there's a blowout, he'll do it better the next time. You know, it's like, he's got to create his own rhythm. He's got to create his own relationship with that child. He has to be present, and he is going to do it different than the mother does it. And that's the good news. Babies learn about love, about caring, about the physical world based on how they're handled, based on how they're spoken to, based on how they are in their life. So if a dad takes, you know, his child and, you know, tosses him up in the air and catches him, well, the baby's learning that he's safe. The baby's learning about being physical and in a body. You know, and the mother's sitting over here, oh, don't do that. Well, as long as he's not dropping the baby, you know, he is going to do things differently than the mother does them. And that is great. We had when we started our Fathers to Be classes, we had a really hard time. Elmer and I came up with a 2.5-day curriculum to work with expectant dads. And it was fabulous. It was just a way to take them through this whole preparedness process. Well, then we went out and tried to find the expectant dads, right? Well, it's like herding cats. I mean, you try to find an expectant dad. How do you know? He doesn't have a bump. He's not going out, you know, for coffee with his mates, and then it's obvious here they are talking about birth, you know. So we had a really challenging time trying to get guys in a room. It was confounding. And we tried for months, and we advertised in the local newspaper and did some things like that. And But dad's classes had never been offered before, ever, of any kind. This was 2006. So a friend of ours who was a doula and a childbirth educator, she had a spare room in her house where she held her couples classes, right? Wonderful woman. And so she said, would y'all like to come do a class in my teaching room? We said, yes, please. She goes, okay, Thursday night I have a couples class and I'll tell the guys about your class Saturday morning. So she announced it to the class, hey, you guys are welcome to come on Saturday morning to a dad's class. And they go, what's a dad's class? And she goes, well, I don't exactly know, but I trust these guys. I know them, and I know there's going to be something worthwhile happening in this room. So come on along. No cost, just come. So we showed up and they showed up. We had them for like 2 hours. I mean, this was a very short opportunity, right? But it was an opportunity. This was the first time we had the opportunity to actually be with expectant dads. So they came and, you could tell they were kind of nervous. They weren't quite sure. And we weren't quite sure. This was in England. We weren't quite sure how far to go, but we had developed a little map of let's take this little journey with these guys. And we just sort of slowly walked into it because, we deal with the emotional realm quite a bit. And so it was, so we just took these guys down the road, of our experience of understanding about pregnancy, birth, and breastfeeding and how to best embrace it and feel safe with it. And they were, at the end of the thing, they were amazed. So the next day I did exit interviews with all of these 6 guys. And they, 3 of the 6, or was it 4? I'm not sure which, said, if I had been told in advance what we were going to do, I wouldn't have come because it sounded a little, too feely, touchy, And every single one said, I'm so grateful I came. I feel so much better. I feel so much safer. I feel like I have, something to put a handle on here that I've been given a gift. And we're like, yes, thank goodness, And so then we held another one of those a month or 2 later, not sure how long it was. And we invited the guys from the first class to come back. Well, 2 of them came back. One came back first at the beginning of the class. He had his new baby with him. Well, this was the first time the baby had been away from the mother and the first time the father had sole responsibility for this baby. So this was a precious moment in time. So here are these other guys sitting around and here's this new dad with his new baby, tiny little baby, right? And so one of the things we handled in our class was to work with the word yes. The most important thing a mother can do during labor is to say yes to every cell in her body, to allow her body, because fear looks like no. Fear looks like holding on, closing down, shutting down, right? Well, the cervix needs to open up, right? The uterus needs to do its work. And that works a lot better with yes than it does with no. So this one guy that was here, he said he went home after our class and he wrote yes on a bunch of pieces of paper and put them around their apartment. And the mom is going, this is the expectant mom, pregnant lady. She's going, what's this about? She said, just a second, I'll tell you, it's something I learned in class today. And so he talked to her about yes, Well, this couple ended up with a unavoidable cesarean section. And they still worked with yes. They still stayed present with each other. They still had a wonderful experience, as much as can be, out of an unexpected medical emergency. So that was all by itself, what a great gift, wow. So then after about half an hour, he left. And another father showed up with his new baby. Well, I mean, we couldn't have hired somebody to come and do this and had the outcome any better. So this young man, they had a home birth. It was a water birth. They had music playing. There were flowers. There was a doula. There was a midwife. It was this very wonderful, beautiful experience, soft music in the background. They had this profound experience that it could not have been more perfect. And yet, so we had two entirely different experiences that these new dads had. And yet they both embraced them. They both came through it feeling good about themselves and about the process and their new family. So that was so rewarding. And it's something we could not have hired somebody to come into that little classroom and to teach. We could not have taught that through any other method than from the dads themselves. So it was really amazing to have that happen in that way. And that just, reflected how important that is. And we still were really challenged finding enough fathers to do. We never did do the 2.5-day workshop that we had planned. And I went on mostly then, and after that, then I wrote my book because I realized I had to reach beyond, my voice. I had to reach beyond what I could find, out there in society. I had to send a messenger out there, if you will. And so then most of the work then that we did carried on with doing workshops for doulas and midwives and birth educators, because they're in contact with the dads every day. And they have the ability to influence the fathers in a way that we actually didn't. So that was really good. And then I started speaking at conferences and workshops in various countries. And that it just became a way that it was more a cultural initiative and a way to have a larger impact on society than just working with expectant dads. And I'd still love to do a 2.5-day workshop with expectant dads, and that never came to pass. So thank you for recognizing that fathers make a world of difference, because they absolutely do, and they're important. And same-sex partners as well. The support that the mother gets and the support that the partner gets is absolutely crucial to the child, the life of the child, and the future of that family.